The first time Jerry asked me to teach him how to dance, I laughed because I honestly thought he was joking. He stood in my apartment doorway with one hand shoved into the pocket of his hoodie and the other holding two coffees like some kind of peace offering. "I'm serious," he said. Yeah. You hate dancing." "I do." I took one of the coffees from him. "So why would you want me to teach you?" He scratched the back of his neck and looked everywhere except at me. "I sort of need it." That answer only made me laugh harder. Jerry had been my best friend since freshman year of college. 4 years of terrible roommates, impossible professors, late-night gaming sessions, road trips with barely enough gas money, and enough inside jokes to fill an entire notebook. We were 24 now, both finally working real jobs, still living only 15 minutes apart because either of us seemed capable of functioning without calling the other at least twice a day. If anyone had asked who knew me best, the answer would have been Jerry. If anyone had asked who knew him best, that would have been me. Which was exactly why this request felt completely insane. "You've spent 4 years making fun of dancing." "I know. You called salsa organized panic." "It is." "You said ballroom dancing looked like people trying not to fall over." He sighed. "I remember. And now you're here asking me to teach you? Please." That single word caught me off guard. Jerry almost never asked for help. He was the kind of guy who would spend 6 hours trying to assemble furniture incorrectly before admitting he needed the instruction manual. Seeing him actually asking, that was unusual. I stepped aside. "Fine. Come in." He walked into my apartment like he'd been there 1,000 times. Because he had. My place practically felt like his second home. He dropped onto my couch while I headed toward the kitchen. "So," I called. "What's the real reason?" "No reason." "Liar." Silence. I came back into the living room carrying a bowl of pretzels. Jerry was staring out the window. "There's this girl." I nearly dropped the bowl. "There it is." He rolled his eyes. "I knew you were going to say that." "Because it's true." He nodded. "Yeah." I sat across from him. "Tell me." He looked almost embarrassed. "Her name's Emma." "When did this happen?" "We've been talking at work." I blinked. "You never mentioned her." "I didn't want to jinx anything." "Jerry." "What?" "You've known me for 4 years." "I know. You tell me when you buy new socks. They were really comfortable socks. And somehow you forgot to mention you've been talking to someone?" He smiled sheepishly. "I guess." I threw a pretzel at him. He caught it without looking. "So what's dancing got to do with Emma?" He leaned back. "Her sister's getting married next month." I nodded slowly. "Okay. And she asked if I'd go with her." "That's great." "It is. So where's the problem?" He looked horrified. "There'll be dancing." I stared at him for 3 full seconds. Then I burst out laughing again. "Oh no. Don't. You accepted before thinking about the reception?" I panicked. "You panicked?" she asked in front of people. I couldn't stop laughing. Jerry covered his face with both hands. "I hate you." "No, you don't." "No." He sighed. "I really don't." That was the thing about us. No matter how ridiculous one of us was being, the other always showed up. Even if showing up meant spending an entire evening laughing first. Eventually I managed to calm down. "So." I took another sip of coffee. "You want actual lessons?" "If you're willing." "I used to teach beginners." I remember. Back in college, I'd worked part-time at a community dance studio. Mostly beginner ballroom classes. Nothing fancy. Just enough experience to keep people from stepping on each other's feet. Jerry had visited the studio exactly once. He'd watched 5 minutes through the glass. Declared everyone looked terrified. And left. "You realize this isn't something you learn overnight. I've got a month." "That's not terrible. So you'll help?" I looked at him. He seemed genuinely nervous. And something about that softened me. "Yeah." His shoulders visibly relaxed. Seriously? Seriously. He grinned. Dude, don't thank me yet. Why? Because you're probably going to be awful. He groaned. I knew there was a catch. The catch is that you'll have to listen. I can do that. And practice. I can do that. And stop making jokes every 5 seconds. He looked offended. Now you're asking for miracles. I smiled. We'll start tomorrow. The next evening, Jerry showed up wearing running shoes and athletic shorts. I stared at him. What? I said, dancing. Yeah. You dress for a marathon. I didn't know what people wear. I laughed. It's fine. My apartment building had a small community room downstairs with enough open space for basic practice. It wasn't perfect. But it worked. I connected my phone to the speaker. Soft instrumental music filled the room. Jerry immediately looked uncomfortable. I already hate this. We haven't started. Exactly. I walked into the center of the room. Come here. He obeyed. First lesson. He stood with his arms crossed. I'm listening. Relax. I am relaxed? You look like you're about to negotiate a hostage situation. I always stand like this. I know. And it's not helping. He uncrossed his arms dramatically. There. Better. I demonstrated the basic step. Nothing complicated. He nodded. I think I can do that. He couldn't. Within 30 seconds he'd managed to step on his own foot. I don't understand how that's physically possible, I admitted. I have talent. For the wrong thing. Exactly. We both laughed. And somehow that made everything easier. The tension disappeared. Jerry stopped trying to look cool. I stopped expecting perfection. For the next hour we worked through the basics. Forward. Back. Side. Together. Again. 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 Every time he made a mistake, he'd immediately look at me. Waiting. Not because he expected criticism. Because he wanted to know if I'd noticed. I always had. He always laughed first. Hopeless? Not hopeless. Really? No. I considered him carefully. Just impatient. That's fair. By the end of the lesson he wasn't good. Not even close. But he was improving. And that surprised both of us. I actually remembered that sequence. You did? I thought my brain would reject it. Apparently not. He looked oddly proud of himself. It was kind of adorable. I immediately pushed that thought away. Adorable? Really, Larry? That wasn't a word I'd ever associated with Jerry. He was my best friend. The guy who left empty pizza boxes in my kitchen. The guy who still borrowed my chargers because he somehow lost every cable he owned. The guy who texted me pictures of weird-shaped potatoes because he thought they looked funny. Cute wasn't part of the equation. I blamed exhaustion. We packed up the speaker. Locked the community room. Started walking back upstairs. You know, Jerry said. This wasn't as embarrassing as I expected. High praise. I mean it. I'm glad. He smiled. So, same time tomorrow? I looked at him. You actually want another lesson? I don't want Emma thinking I dance like a malfunctioning shopping cart. I laughed. Fair enough. As we reached my apartment door, Jerry hesitated. Thanks. His voice was quieter now. Genuinely. I unlocked the door. You don't have to thank me. I know. But I wanted to. I shrugged. That's what best friends are for. He smiled. Yeah. Either of us knew it then. But that simple decision to meet again the next evening would quietly change everything about our lives. The next evening, Jerry arrived exactly on time. That alone was suspicious. Normally he was the kind of person who texted 5 minutes away, while he was still looking for his keys. This time he knocked on my door at 7 sharp. You've changed, I said as I opened it. I know. You were actually punctual. I've decided to become a better person. I'll believe it when you return one of my hoodies. He looked genuinely confused. I still have your hoodie? You have 3. I thought they were mine. Exactly my point. He laughed as he walked inside. I'll check my closet. You've been saying that for 2 years. And eventually I'll be right. We headed downstairs again. Tonight he looked a little less nervous. Still awkward. Still stiff. But willing. That mattered more than talent. As soon as the music started, I noticed something different. His feet remembered yesterday's lesson. Not perfectly. But enough that we weren't starting from zero. See? I said. You practiced. He froze for half a second. Maybe. I folded my arms. You practiced. I watched videos. I couldn't hide my smile. You watched videos. Don't sound so surprised. I'm impressed. I only spent, maybe an hour. An hour? He looked embarrassed. I wanted to stop looking completely hopeless. For some reason, hearing that made me happier than it probably should have. Most people expected progress without putting in the work. Jerry had actually gone home and practiced. Quietly. Without telling me. Show me what you remember. He nodded. The first few steps were shaky. Then smoother. Then surprisingly solid. When he finished, he looked at me with raised eyebrows. Well? You've improved. I have. You actually have. His grin appeared instantly. I knew it. You still need work. I know. But you're learning faster than I expected. He rubbed the back of his neck. I guess I don't hate this anymore. Careful. Why? You might accidentally start enjoying yourself. I wouldn't go that far. Not yet. We spent another hour building on the basics. This time I introduced turning. Jerry stared at me like I just suggested advanced calculus. You're kidding. No. I finally figured out walking. Congratulations. And now you want spinning? Trust me. I don't. You should. He sighed dramatically. This friendship has become very demanding. It'll survive. I hope so. After several failed attempts, he finally managed a clean turn. His eyes lit up. I did it. You did. Did you see that? I was standing right here. I didn't fall. I'm proud of you. He laughed so hard he immediately lost his balance again. Never mind. You celebrated too early. I really did. At one point I walked behind him to adjust his posture. Relax your shoulders. They are relaxed? They're practically touching your ears. I can't help it. You absolutely can. I lightly tapped one shoulder. Lower. He obeyed. There. Better? Much. He looked over at me. So this is what teaching feels like? What do you mean? You notice everything. I have to. That's exhausting. It becomes automatic. He nodded thoughtfully. I guess you've always done that. Done what? Notice people. I hadn't really thought about it before. Maybe he was right. Working with beginners had taught me to watch tiny details. Weight shifts. Timing. Confidence. The little signs someone was about to panic before they even realized it themselves. You noticed I was nervous yesterday. You were. You didn't say anything. You would have denied it. I would have. Exactly. He smiled. You know me too well. I've earned that privilege. You definitely have. There was something comfortable about moments like these. No pretending. No awkward silences. Just two people who had known each other long enough that conversation happened naturally. We took a short break. Jerry sat on the floor with a bottle of water while I leaned against the wall. You ever miss teaching? He caught me off guard. A little. Why'd you stop? Life. He nodded. Fair. After college I got busy. You were good at it. You saw one class. I saw enough. I smiled. I liked helping people. You still do? What makes you say that? He looked at me like the answer was obvious. You always help everyone. I don't help everyone. You help me move. That's different. You helped Kevin study. He would have failed. You fixed my resume. It was terrible. My point exactly. I laughed. I guess I do. You don't even think about it. His voice had become unusually sincere. You just show up. For some reason, those words stayed with me. I wasn't used to hearing compliments from Jerry. Not real ones. Most of our conversations were built on sarcasm. This felt different. Almost too honest. I changed the subject. So, ready for round 2? He stood up. As ready as I'll ever be. This time we worked on dancing with a partner. I demonstrated where each hand should go. Imagine someone standing here. He copied the position. Like this? Close. I adjusted his right arm slightly. A little higher. He looked at me. And my left? Here. I reached for his hand without thinking. The moment our hands met, something strange happened. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just a pause. Jerry looked at me. I looked back. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I stepped away. Perfect. He cleared his throat. So. Neither of us acknowledged the tiny silence that had settled between us. We simply continued. Another hour passed before we finally called it a night. As we walked back upstairs, Jerry seemed unusually thoughtful. You okay? I asked. Yeah. You've been quiet. I'm just thinking. Dangerous. I know. He laughed. When we reached my apartment, he leaned against the hallway wall. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why haven't you dated anyone lately? I blinked. That question came out of nowhere. What brought that on? I don't know. He shrugged. I was just thinking. I've been busy. For almost a year? I guess. You used to go on dates. I used to. What changed? I considered the question. I got tired. Of dating? Of forcing connections. He nodded slowly. I get that. What about you? He smiled. I thought we already established there's an Emma. Right. You nervous? A little. You'll be fine. I hope so. There was a brief silence. Then Jerry smiled in that familiar crooked way I'd seen thousands of times before. You know. What? If this works out, I'll expect full credit. He laughed. Deal. I watched him walk down the hallway toward the elevator. Just before the doors closed, he looked back. He lifted one hand in a small wave. I waved back. For reasons I couldn't explain, I stood there for another minute after the elevator disappeared. Something felt different. I couldn't have said what. Only that the easy rhythm we'd always shared now carried a strange new awareness. It was subtle enough to ignore. So I did. At least I tried. Over the next 2 weeks, our lessons quietly became part of our routine. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday morning. Sometimes an extra session if Jerry finished work early. Neither of us ever had to ask. One of us would simply text, "You free?" The answer was almost always yes. It reminded me of college. Back then we'd somehow ended up eating dinner together 4 nights a week without ever planning it. Now we were spending evenings counting dance steps instead. Again, I said. Jerry groaned dramatically. If I hear the word again one more time, you'll improve. I was hoping for something more exciting. You came to the wrong teacher. I definitely did. He smiled anyway. I counted the rhythm aloud. 1, 2, 3. He followed. Much smoother now. His shoulders had relaxed. His movements no longer looked forced. Most importantly, he had stopped looking at his feet every 3 seconds. Good. I didn't step on myself. A remarkable achievement. You sound proud. I am. I should put that on my resume. I laughed. Please don't. He walked over to grab a bottle of water. You know what's weird? What? I actually notice music now. What do you mean? I used to hear songs. He shrugged. Now I hear the beat. I smiled. That happens. It's like someone switched something on. Your brain is connecting movement to rhythm. That's surprisingly cool. It is. He looked around the empty room. I get why you like teaching. That sentence lingered between us. I forgot how much I missed it. You should do it again. I don't know. Why not? I've got a full-time job. So people get tired. Jerry took another drink. You always look less tired after these lessons. I looked at him. He wasn't joking. You've noticed? Of course. He leaned against the wall. After work you're usually exhausted. He pointed toward the speaker. But after this. He smiled. You look happy. I hadn't realized that. Maybe because he was right. These evenings had become something I genuinely looked forward to. Not just because I enjoyed teaching. Because I enjoyed spending time with Jerry. More time than usual. Longer conversations. Different conversations. It felt nice. Dangerously nice. I pushed the thought aside. Come on. No more breaks. You're ruthless. I'm efficient. Same thing. As we practiced another sequence, Jerry suddenly stopped. What? I've got a question. Go ahead. Did you ever teach someone who was hopeless? I pretended to think. Several. And? They all improved. So there's hope for me. There was never a lack of hope. He smiled. You know. What? I was expecting you to lose patience. Why? You've corrected the same mistake like 20 times. So most people would have gotten annoyed. I shrugged. Learning takes repetition. You really believe that? I do. He looked thoughtful again. I wish more people were like you. The compliment landed harder than it should have. I looked away. You don't have to flatter me. I'm not. I know when you're lying. I'm terrible at lying. You really are. So believe me. I didn't answer. Because believing him felt strangely personal. Instead, I clapped my hands once. Ready? No. Perfect. He laughed. Halfway through the lesson, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. My younger sister. I answered. Hey. Hi. You busy? A little. Jerry immediately stepped back to give me space. I'll wait. I nodded my thanks. My sister spent 5 minutes telling me about a family dinner our parents were planning. When I finally hung up, Jerry was sitting cross-legged on the floor scrolling through his phone. You didn't have to wait. It's fine. You could have gone home. He looked up. I like hanging out. The words came out so naturally that I almost missed them. I do too. He smiled. Good. Something warm settled quietly inside my chest. Again. Lately that kept happening around him. Little moments. Simple conversations. Nothing unusual. Nothing that should have meant anything. Except they somehow did. We finished the lesson just before 9. Instead of leaving immediately, Jerry followed me upstairs. I'm starving. I've noticed you say that every day. Because it's always true. I opened my refrigerator. I've got pasta. I'm listening. And leftover garlic bread. You've become my favorite person. I thought I already was. He looked at me with a completely straight face. You were. The answer came so quickly that I nearly dropped the container I was holding. He didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he did. Either way, he simply grabbed 2 plates from the cabinet. You still keep these in the wrong place. They're exactly where they've always been. Which is wrong. You've been criticizing my kitchen for 4 years. And I'll continue. 20 minutes later, we were sitting across from each other at my small dining table. The television stayed off. Neither of us seemed interested. Conversation filled the apartment instead. Jerry told me about work. A new manager. A coworker who somehow managed to microwave fish 3 days in a row. I laughed so hard I almost choked. That's a crime. I agree. You should report him. I considered it. Then I asked about Emma. So? He smiled. What? How's everything going? It's good. You sound uncertain. I just. He hesitated. I don't know. What? I don't think she's interested. I frowned. Why? We get along. He stirred his pasta absent-mindedly. But it feels. He searched for the word. Friendly. I watched him for a moment. Have you asked her out? Not exactly. So you're guessing. Maybe. You've always been terrible at reading people. I know. I smiled. You once thought our economics professor hated you. He did. He invited you to his barbecue. Jerry blinked. Oh. Exactly. He laughed. I forgot about that. You've got a habit of assuming the worst. He pointed his fork at me. You always call me out. It's one of my talents. I've noticed. His expression softened. I'm glad you do. There it was again. That strange sincerity. No sarcasm. No joke. Just honest words. For reasons I couldn't explain, they stayed with me long after dinner ended. When Jerry finally stood to leave, he paused at the front door. Same time Thursday? I nodded. Absolutely. He smiled. I'm actually looking forward to it. So am I. The words escaped before I had time to think about them. Jerry's smile grew just a little wider. Good night, Larry. Good night. After the door closed, I leaned against it for a second. My apartment suddenly felt unusually quiet. That wasn't new. I'd lived alone for almost a year. The silence had never bothered me before. Tonight it did. I found myself looking at the empty chair where Jerry had been sitting only minutes earlier. Then I caught myself. I laughed under my breath. Get a grip. He was my best friend. That was all. At least, that was what I kept telling myself. Thursday arrived faster than I expected. I spent most of the day distracted. Not because of the lesson. At least that was what I kept telling myself. Work dragged on longer than usual, and by the time I got home I barely had enough time to change before my phone buzzed. Outside. I smiled. No greeting. No explanation. Classic Jerry. When I opened the apartment door, he was leaning against the hallway wall with 2 paper cups in his hands. I brought coffee. You keep bribing me. It's working. It really is. He handed me one of the cups. I figured you need it. You know me too well. I've had years of practice. We walked downstairs together. Something felt different tonight. Not uncomfortable. Just quieter. Jerry wasn't filling every silence with jokes. Instead, he looked like he had something on his mind. You okay? I asked. Yeah. You sure? Just tired. I believed him. Mostly. The lesson started well. His timing had become almost natural. He no longer needed me to count every step. Instead, he listened to the music. That alone felt like a small victory. Good. He completed another turn. Again. He laughed. I knew you were going to say that. I have a reputation to maintain. You really do. We repeated the combination. This time it looked smooth. Confident. I couldn't help smiling. There it is. What? That looked like dancing. He stared at me. Seriously? Seriously. His face lit up. You know. What? I don't think anyone's ever said something like that to me. What do you mean? I've never really been good at anything creative. I frowned. That's not true. It kind of is. No. I shook my head. You're just comparing yourself to experts. He looked unconvinced. You learn fast. Only because you're patient. No. I smiled. You learn because you actually listen. He looked away. For some reason, that simple compliment seemed to affect him more than I expected. A few minutes later, I demonstrated another movement. This one's a little harder. Jerry nodded. Okay. I stepped into position. Watch carefully. He did. Very carefully. Too carefully. When I finished, he was still looking at me. What? Huh? You're staring. He blinked. Oh. He laughed awkwardly. Sorry. Were you trying to memorize it? Something like that. I wasn't completely convinced. But I let it go. Your turn. He copied the movement. Almost perfectly. I raised an eyebrow. That was fast. I had a good teacher. Flattery again. I'm just telling the truth. There it was. That same serious tone. No joke hiding behind it. I suddenly found it difficult to meet his eyes. Thankfully, the music saved me. Let's keep going. We practiced for another 40 minutes before I decided he was ready for something new. Okay. I walked toward him. We're going to try leading. Jerry immediately looked nervous. I thought we were already doing that. Not really. What's the difference? You've been learning your own steps. I stood in front of him. Now you have to guide another person. He swallowed. You mean you? Exactly. He laughed. That sounds much harder. It is. I showed him where to stand. Relax. I'm trying. I know. I placed my hand lightly against his shoulder. Don't overthink it. Easier said than done. Then I offered him my other hand. He hesitated for the briefest moment before taking it. His hand was warm. Mine suddenly felt strangely tense. Good. I kept my voice calm. Now breathe. I'm breathing. Barely. He laughed quietly. You're making me nervous. I'm literally standing still. I know. Then why are you nervous? He opened his mouth. Closed it again. Finally, he looked away. I don't know. Neither did I. But something about the moment felt unexpectedly intimate. Not because we were touching. Because neither of us seemed able to ignore the fact that we were. Okay, I said. Lead me. He took one careful step. Then another. His movements were cautious. Almost hesitant. Like he was afraid of making a mistake. Don't think so much. I'm trying not to. You keep asking permission with every step. I do? You do. He smiled sheepishly. Sorry. You don't have to apologize. I don't want to mess up. You will. He looked horrified. What? You'll make mistakes. I smiled. So will everyone else. He laughed. I hate how reasonable you are. I've heard that before. After another few minutes, something finally clicked. Jerry stopped concentrating on every individual movement. Instead, he simply listened. Moved. Trusted himself. Without realizing it, he guided me smoothly across the room. When the music ended, neither of us moved immediately. We were still standing exactly where the last note had left us. Closer than before. Jerry looked at me. I actually did it. You did. I wasn't thinking. That's why it worked. He smiled. Then neither of us let go right away. It only lasted a second. Maybe two. But it was long enough for both of us to notice. Jerry cleared his throat first. I should probably. Yeah. I stepped back. The room suddenly felt much larger. Much quieter. Neither of us mentioned it. Instead, Jerry reached for his water bottle. I think. He took a long drink. I finally understand why people like dancing. I smiled. Why? He looked at me for a moment before answering. I don't think it's really about the dancing. His words settled somewhere deep inside me. Before I could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed almost immediately. What is it? I asked. It's Emma. He stared at the message for a few seconds. Then he slowly slipped the phone back into his pocket. Everything okay? He forced a smile. Yeah. But for the first time since we'd started these lessons, I knew he wasn't telling me the truth. Jerry stayed unusually quiet while we packed up. Normally, he'd fill the silence with a joke. Tonight, he just slipped his phone into his pocket and helped me carry the speaker upstairs. I unlocked my apartment. You want something to eat? He hesitated. I probably shouldn't. That's not what I asked? A small smile appeared. Then, yeah? Pizza? You already know the answer. 20 minutes later, we were sitting on opposite ends of my couch with a pizza box balanced between us. The television was on. Neither of us was watching it. Jerry kept checking his phone. Not obsessively. Just enough for me to notice. Finally, I asked, Emma? He looked up. Yeah. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. He sighed. No. He set the phone on the coffee table. I actually do. I waited. She canceled. The wedding? No. Our date. I frowned. I thought the wedding was the date. It was supposed to be. He picked at the edge of the pizza box. She said she thinks we'd be better as friends. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I'm sorry. He shrugged. It happens. You liked her. I thought I did. Something about that answer felt incomplete. What do you mean? He leaned back against the couch. I don't know. I've been thinking. Dangerous. He smiled faintly. I know. Then his expression became serious again. When she sent the message. He paused. I expected to feel worse. But I mostly felt disappointed that I'd wasted your time. I stared at him. My time? With all the lessons? I actually laughed. Jerry looked confused. What's funny? You honestly think teaching my best friend how to dance was a waste of time? I mean, no. I shook my head. Not even close. You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it to make you feel better. I met his eyes. I've enjoyed every lesson. He looked at me for a long second. I have too. The conversation drifted after that. We talked about work, movies, a new restaurant opening downtown. Anything except Emma. Around 10, Jerry stood. I should head home. You've got work early. Unfortunately. I walked him to the door. Just as he reached for the handle, he stopped. Larry? Yeah? Can I ask you something? Of course. He looked strangely uncertain. If Emma hadn't cancelled. Yeah? Would you have kept teaching me until the wedding? I smiled. Obviously. And after? I blinked. What do you mean? I mean. He rubbed the back of his neck. I actually don't want to stop. I laughed softly. You've become addicted to ballroom dancing? I don't think that's it. Then what is it? He searched for an answer. Finally, he shrugged. I like spending time with you. The sentence landed with surprising force. Not because it was unusual. We'd spent years together. Of course, he liked spending time with me. But something about the way he said it. Quietly. Honestly. Without trying to be funny. It felt different. I like spending time with you too. His shoulders relaxed. Good. He opened the door. I'll see you Saturday? You don't have a reason to practice anymore. I know. So why Saturday? He smiled. Do I need a reason? I looked at him for a second. No. I didn't think so. After he left, I cleaned up the pizza boxes and tried to ignore the strange feeling following me around the apartment. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't excitement. It was confusion. I couldn't stop replaying the evening. The way he'd looked disappointed about wasting my time instead of losing the date. The way he'd asked if we could keep meeting. The way he'd smiled when I said yes. I shook my head. You're overthinking this. Jerry had just been rejected. Of course he wanted to spend time with his best friend. There was nothing unusual about that. Nothing at all. Saturday morning arrived with bright sunshine and a text at exactly 9. Breakfast first? My treat. I replied almost immediately. Only if I get pancakes. Deal. We met at the little diner we'd been visiting since college. The waitress greeted us before we'd even sat down. The usual? Jerry grinned. See? We're predictable. We've been coming here for 4 years. Still. 10 minutes later we were drinking coffee while waiting for breakfast. Jerry looked lighter. Not completely. But better than 2 nights earlier. How are you doing? He knew exactly what I meant. I'm okay. Really? Yeah. He stirred his coffee slowly. I thought I'd be more upset. But I think I like the idea more than the reality. I nodded. That happens. He smiled. You know what's weird? What? I don't regret asking her. Good. I regret almost missing all this. He gestured vaguely between us. The lessons? The time. I looked at him. We already spent plenty of time together. I know. But this feels different. My heart skipped once. Different how? He frowned thoughtfully. I don't know. We actually talk. I almost laughed. We've always talked. Not like this. He wasn't wrong. Somewhere between the first lesson and today, our conversations had quietly changed. They were slower. More honest. The teasing was still there. But underneath it, there was something else. Something I couldn't quite name. Neither of us mentioned it again. Instead, we finished breakfast and walked toward my apartment. Neither of us realized that someone was about to notice the change before we did. As we turned the corner toward my apartment building, I spotted someone sitting on the front steps. Oh no. Jerry followed my gaze. What? My sister. He laughed. That's the reaction of an innocent man. You've never met my sister. I've heard enough stories. You should be worried. Now I'm curious. She noticed us before we reached the entrance. Larry! She stood up with a grin that usually meant trouble. There you are. What are you doing here? I was in the neighborhood. I raised an eyebrow. You drove 40 minutes because you happened to be nearby? She ignored the question completely. Then she looked at Jerry. So this is Jerry. He smiled politely. You must be Mia. I've heard a lot about you. Jerry glanced at me. I hope mostly good things. I've heard everything. She shook his hand. I finally get to meet the famous best friend. I sighed. Please don't encourage her. She laughed. I won't. That was obviously a lie. We invited her upstairs. Within 5 minutes she had made herself comfortable on my couch with a cup of coffee. Jerry sat in the armchair across from her. I immediately noticed something dangerous. They got along. Far too well. So, Mia said, tell me something embarrassing about Larry. I pointed at her. Absolutely not. Jerry pretended to think. Jerry. He cried during a dog commercial. I stared at him. That happened once. Mia burst into laughter. I knew there had to be stories. There are too many. Jerry. What? You started this. I did. So now it's your turn. Mia folded her arms. Oh, I like this. I smiled. Jerry once locked himself out of his apartment. He nodded. True. Wearing slippers. Also true. With no phone. Unfortunately. He had to borrow someone's charger just to call me. Jerry sighed dramatically. It was a difficult day. We all laughed. The conversation flowed naturally after that. It felt surprisingly easy. Mia asked about our college years. Jerry filled in details I'd forgotten. I corrected his exaggerated versions. He insisted his versions were more entertaining. Eventually Mia looked around my apartment. So, she smiled. You two spend a lot of time together. We always have. Jerry answered before I could. She nodded slowly. I can tell. Something about the way she said it made me suspicious. She stood. I should head home. I'll walk you downstairs, I offered. Jerry stayed behind to wash the coffee mugs. The moment we reached the hallway, Mia looked at me. So? I sighed. What? You like him? I nearly missed the last step. What? She looked completely calm. You heard me. Jerry's my best friend. I know. That's all. She tilted her head. Is it? I stared at her. Where is this coming from? She smiled. The way you look at him. I laughed. Nonsense. You smile differently. I do not. You do. I shook my head. You're imagining things. She didn't argue. Instead, she gave me a long look that made me deeply uncomfortable. Larry. What? I've known you your whole life. I know. I know your happy face. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She smiled gently. I'm not saying anything else. Good. But, I groaned. There it is. You should ask yourself why spending time with him suddenly makes you this happy. I looked away. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Before I could answer, she hugged me. Call Mom. I will. And stop pretending you don't think. I don't. You absolutely do. She laughed and headed toward the parking lot. I stood outside for almost a minute before going back upstairs. Her words refused to leave my head. You smiled differently. Ridiculous. She'd met Jerry once. She couldn't possibly know. Right. When I opened my apartment door, Jerry was drying the last coffee mug. Everything okay? Yeah. Your sister seems nice. She's dangerous. He laughed. I liked her. That's exactly what worries me. He set the towel down. She said you're impossible to embarrass. She lies. I figured. He grabbed his jacket. I should get going. I nodded automatically. He walked toward the door, then stopped. Actually. What? He looked at me for a second. Want to go for a walk? I blinked. Now? It's nice outside. I looked toward the window. The afternoon sun filled the street below. I don't really feel like sitting at home yet. His voice was casual, but hopeful. I smiled. Yeah. I'd like that. We wandered through the park without any destination. Families filled the walking paths. Kids chased pigeons across the grass. A street musician played an old acoustic guitar near the fountain. For several minutes neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It rarely was between us. Finally, Jerry laughed quietly. What? I just realized something. What? I asked you to teach me dancing because of Emma? Yeah. And now Emma's gone. Also true. But somehow. He looked around the park. I'm still here. I smiled. I noticed. He smiled back. I'm glad. Neither of us realized how loaded those two simple words had become. But somewhere inside me, Mia's voice echoed again. You smiled differently. For the first time. I wasn't completely sure she was wrong. That evening stayed in my head far longer than it should have. Not because anything unusual had happened. Nothing had. Jerry and I had walked through the park. Talked about random things. Laughed at a dog that refused to leave a duck alone. Then we'd gone home. It was completely ordinary. So why couldn't I stop thinking about it? Sunday morning I tried distracting myself by cleaning the apartment. That lasted exactly 20 minutes. My phone buzzed. Need your opinion? I smiled. On what? 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Clothes. I laughed. Come over. 15 minutes later, Jerry was standing in my living room holding 3 shirts on hangers. I stared at him. You brought options. I've learned to prepare. You've never asked for fashion advice before. I know. He laid the shirts across my couch. Which one? I examined them carefully. A blue button-up. Why? It suits you. You answered way too fast. I've seen you wear it. Oh. He nodded. Fair. He held it against himself. This one? Definitely. You sure? Positive. He looked down at the shirt. You always notice stuff like that. What stuff? What people look good in. I shrugged. I guess. He smiled. I don't. You don't have to. I kind of wish I did. I folded the other two shirts. So. What's the occasion? My cousin's birthday. The one with the giant family? Exactly. You'll survive. I hope so. He glanced toward the hallway. Mind if I change here? Go ahead. My apartment's on the other side of town. I pointed toward the bathroom. Use that. A few minutes later he walked back into the living room wearing the blue shirt. I looked up. Then accidentally forgot to say anything. What? His voice pulled me back. Nothing. You made that face. What face? The one where you're judging me. I laughed. I'm not judging you. Then why are you staring? I hesitated. Because the honest answer was unexpectedly complicated. He looked good. Really good. The shirt fit him perfectly. His hair was slightly messy from changing. He looked more confident than usual. And for one confusing second, I simply admired him. Which felt dangerous. Larry? I blinked. Sorry. So? I cleared my throat. It looks good. Just good? Very good. He smiled. I knew you'd pick the right one. He reached for his jacket. Thanks. No problem. As he headed toward the door, he stopped. I'll probably be back around 8. Okay. You doing anything tonight? Not really. His smile returned. Maybe I'll stop by. Sure. He left. The apartment became quiet again. I looked at the empty spot where he'd been standing only seconds earlier. Then I sighed. This is getting ridiculous. My sister's words refused to disappear. You smiled differently. No. She was reading too much into things. Jerry was my best friend. That was all. Around 8:30 my phone buzzed. You awake? Yeah. Coming over. A few minutes later he knocked. The moment I opened the door, I knew something had happened. He wasn't upset. Just thoughtful. How was the party? He stepped inside. Long. I can imagine. He dropped onto my couch with a tired sigh. You ever feel like you don't quite fit somewhere anymore? The question surprised me. What happened? My cousins kept asking why I'm still single. I sat across from him. And? I didn't have an answer. You don't need one. I know. He leaned back. It just got me thinking. About? What I actually want. I waited. He looked toward the ceiling. I always assumed I'd know. Know what? The moment I met the right person. I smiled. Life's usually messier than that. Apparently. He laughed quietly. I don't even know my type anymore. I raised an eyebrow. You had a type? I thought I did. And now? He looked at me. I honestly have no idea. For a second the room felt unusually still. Then Jerry looked away again. I probably sound crazy. Not at all. You've got everything figured out. I almost laughed. You have an incredibly unrealistic opinion of me. Do I? I absolutely don't have everything figured out. You seem like you do. If only. He studied me for a moment. I don't think you realize how calm people feel around you. The sentence caught me completely off guard. What? You make things easier. I do. You always have. His voice was quiet. Whenever something goes wrong. He smiled faintly. My first thought is usually to call you. Something tightened inside my chest. Not painfully. Just enough that I noticed. I never mind. I know. That's why I keep calling. We both laughed. But the feeling stayed. A few minutes later, Jerry stood. I should head home. I walked him to the door again. This time, just before leaving, he looked at me for a second longer than usual. Thanks. What for? For today. You only came over to change your shirt. He smiled. I know. Then, almost absent-mindedly, he added, it still ended up being the best part of my day. Before I could answer, he was already walking toward the elevator. I stood in the hallway until the doors closed. Then I quietly went back inside. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't pick up a book. Instead, I sat on the couch, staring at nothing. Because for the first time, I had to admit something I had been avoiding. I wasn't looking forward to the dance lessons anymore. I was looking forward to Jerry. And those were no longer the same thing. The next lesson never happened. At least, not the way either of us expected. Monday afternoon, I was finishing work when my phone buzzed. Can we meet tonight? No joke. No coffee emoji. No comment about being hungry. Just one sentence. Something immediately felt different. Everything okay? The reply came almost instantly. Yeah. I just need to tell you something. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying not to guess what it was. By 7, Jerry knocked on my door. He wasn't carrying coffee. That was the first sign something was wrong. You look nervous, I said. I am. I stepped aside. He walked in and stayed standing near the entrance instead of making himself comfortable like he always did. Larry. He stopped. Started again. I've been trying to figure something out. I waited. For weeks. He laughed once under his breath. I kept telling myself it was because of Emma. But it wasn't. I felt my heartbeat quicken. He looked directly at me. When she canceled, I thought I'd finally move on. He smiled sadly. But nothing changed. The room had become unbelievably quiet. I still wanted to see you. He swallowed. I still looked forward to every lesson. His voice had become almost unsteady. And then your sister asked me something. I blinked. Mia? He nodded. She caught me in the kitchen while you walked her downstairs. What did she say? He smiled despite himself. She asked if I'd realized yet. Realized what? Jerry looked at the floor for a moment. That every time you smiled at me. He looked back up. I smiled back before I even knew why. I couldn't speak. I spent the entire weekend asking myself why losing Emma didn't hurt. He laughed quietly. The answer turned out to be embarrassingly obvious. Another long silence. I wasn't thinking about her. His eyes never left mine. I was thinking about you. For a second, my mind simply stopped. Every conversation. Every lesson. Every moment that had suddenly felt different. It all made sense. Jerry took a slow breath. I don't expect anything. I don't want to ruin what we have. I just... He smiled nervously. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. He waited. I understand if you don't feel the same. I stared at him. Then I started laughing. Not because it was funny. Because the tension inside me had finally broken. Jerry looked completely confused. I definitely picked the wrong time to confess. I shook my head. No. You didn't. Larry? I took one step closer. I've been driving myself crazy for 2 weeks. His eyebrows lifted. My sister figured it out before I did. He blinked. What? I kept telling myself I was only looking forward to dance lessons. I smiled. But the truth was, I let out a slow breath. I was looking forward to you. For the first time since I'd met him, Jerry was completely speechless. So, he laughed nervously. We're both idiots? I think we've been idiots for a while. He covered his face for a second. I cannot believe Emma accidentally helped me figure this out. I can't believe dancing did. He looked at me again. So. He smiled. Can I ask one more question? Always. Does this mean I don't have to invent excuses to come over anymore? I laughed. I'd prefer if you just knocked. I can do that. And maybe stop pretending you need fashion advice. He grinned. I really did like the blue shirt. It did look good. I know. We both laughed. The nervousness slowly disappeared, replaced by something much more familiar. Comfort. The same comfort we'd always had. Only now either of us was pretending it was just friendship. A week later we still met in the community room downstairs. The speaker played softly in the background. Jerry stood in the middle of the floor. So, he looked around dramatically. No wedding. No date. No reason to keep dancing. I smiled. That's not true. It isn't? I held out my hand. You still owe me one proper dance. He laughed. I was hoping you'd say that. This time, when he took my hand, there was no awkward pause. No confusion. No wondering why everything suddenly felt different. We already knew. The music started. Jerry smiled. You know something? What? I'm still not a great dancer. You've improved? Think so? I know so. He shook his head with a smile. I wasn't talking about dancing. I laughed. I know. We moved together through the same simple steps we'd practiced dozens of times. Only now either of us was counting. We didn't need to. Sometimes the best love stories don't begin with a grand confession. Sometimes they begin with one best friend asking another a very simple question. Can you teach me how to dance? Neither of us realized it then. But we had never really been learning how to dance. We had simply been learning how to find our way to each other.